Town Board, you are live.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Tumbleweed Tuesday edition of the East Hampton Town Board. Carol, would you please read the roll call?
Present. Here. Present.
Present. Please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Today's session will begin with the public portion where any member of the public may address the board on any topic. We ask that you please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. That will be followed by a discussion of personal, wireless, and emergency communications update. And that will be followed by the Lake Montauk Dredging Environmental Assessment Form with Brian Frank. Then we'll have liaison reports, and the board does have a few resolutions to offer as well today. I have a sign-up sheet here for speakers. Carl Irace. Good morning. Welcome, Carl.
Good morning. Nice to see you all. Hope you all had a nice summer. I'm here actually to comment or to listen and potentially comment on the communications discussion. So,
okay, so you'd like to reserve comment for after that?
Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to address the board that's here? David, just in time.
Good morning, Town Board, Mr. Supervisor, Town
Morning.
Board members.
I changed my email. Thank you.
Council persons?
I haven't.
Nope, council member.
Council members.
Members?
Council members.
No longer persons.
Nope.
Oh, we're not.
I just wanted to comment on the upcoming presentation that you're going to have today from the Planning Director and Mr. Shantz on the emergency service communication upgrades and personal wireless service facilities. I noted a couple of omissions and perhaps errors that I'd just like to point out. I think the price tag is now way above 11.1 million in terms of bonding, particularly in light of more recent bonding for the Northwest Brush site. And of course, if and when built or authorized to be built, similar emergency services equipment to the tune of $500,000 or more would be required for the Springs site. I assume that the 41 Melchiona Road site is what we used to call the Gator site. On the emergency service communication system upgrade page, a listing of projects, they've somehow omitted the Northwest Brush dump project site, although it's mentioned later on in terms of personal wireless services. The last time I drove by there, I don't think that the town's equipment is on top of that tower yet. I'm not sure why. And the other thing is, I was hoping that, and this is kind of a question to the presenters when they do make the presentation, since the proposed legislative changes to accommodate all of the various changes in the federal standards for personal wireless services, that legislation was, there was a hearing at the last meeting. I spoke, I raised a question. I'm hoping these gentlemen can perhaps answer that question. And that it refers to the meaning of the new definition of setback, or actually the absence of the definition of setbacks. There's no definition of setbacks for purposes of personal wireless communications in the code. I think there should be. We are now dealing with a single height or setback based on the height, overall height of a tower, a macro type tower. And my question is whether or not that is intended to be a setback both from property borders of the subject site, so as not to impact adversely neighbors, but is it also intended to be a setback from habitable structures on the site of a proposed macro tower? And those are my comments with regard to that. The only other thing I want to mention, I was looking further into the issue of recording of the highway dedication deeds to complete the bulb or cul-de-sac on Handy Lane. And I see that that was something that was going to be on today's agenda, but it's been pulled at the last minute, or at least it seems to be. So I do have a lot of questions about that. Exactly how that came to be, looked into the history of it. It's not a big deal. The deeds were reviewed, authorized, and approved several years ago in 2019. They just haven't been recorded. And as far as I can tell, based on my information from the county clerk's office, as of August 25th, they still have not been recorded. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Anyone else here wish to address the board? Jason, do we have any callers on the line?
Yes, we do. And I will unmute that caller right now.
Thank you.
Hello, caller ending 2587. You're on the air. Can you hear me?
Yes. Good morning, everyone. My name is Steve Kalimnios from the Royal Atlantic and the Montauk Lake Club. How are you guys all today?
Good morning, Steve. How are you?
Very good, very good. After a nice busy summer. Guys, I see that on the agenda you guys have Lake Montauk dredging. I just had a question on that. Was any thought or consideration onto the channel into the lake considered as far as dredging?
Yeah, that's this is only dealing with the federal channel, which, as you know, ends at Star Island. I know that there's been some interest in the general public to, at some point, possibly extend that dredging to the inner portion of the lake. But this has nothing to do with this. It's strictly federally funded and will only be that portion which is within the federal channel.
Gotcha. Well, just to keep it on the minds of everybody, just the channel itself going into the lake has a couple shallow spots. Not that the entire thing is bad, but there are a couple spots, probably 2 or 3, that are just some high spots inside there that may require some attention at some point.
Duly noted, Steve.
All right, great, guys. Thank you.
Take care.
We don't have any other callers.
Okay, we can continue with our work session agenda topics. First up, we have personal wireless and emergency communications update. We have Eric Shantz with us today, our senior planner, and our planning director, Jeremy Samuelson. Gentlemen, have a PowerPoint that you're going to share with us.
Yep. Let me just get it up and running here. Okay. Hopefully we can see that. Yep. Good. Yeah, sure. Why not? Okay. Hi, I'm Eric Shantz from the planning department. Basically, we just want to give the town an update on two separate things: emergency services communications upgrades, as well as what we're doing to improve personal wireless service facilities and communications. If we got to hit the forward button.
Yeah, I thought it was.
No. Usually you can just click on it.
Yeah.
Oh, there you
There
go.
we go.
Okay, so really there's two separate things here. There's emergency services communications. That is the townwide network for police and emergency services providers. And then there's also personal wireless service, which is cell coverage. Again, sometimes on some projects, these two things mesh, but they are two distinct efforts that the town is undertaking. So this is just an introduction to emergency services communications. I was told that's the wrong fire department truck that I put on there, but sorry, it's a nice picture. So moving on, basically, this is the emergency services communication system is maintained by the police department. We began this about 5 years ago to replace an outdated system. Originally, $11.1 million was bonded for the upgrade. I do understand that there has been more investment since then. There's 8 individual projects. You can see them on the right-hand side of the screen. Most of those have been completed. I've color-coded this slide. You know, I apologize. It's tough to read those specific projects, but basically everything you see in green has been completed. A number of those projects you'll see in, well, you won't see because it doesn't show very well. I apologize for that. But in yellow, some of those projects have options to be amended, taller towers, things of that sort. The sole unresolved node, if you will, of this communications network is in Springs. And you can see 103 Flaggy Hill Road, which is Camp Blue Bay. This is actually taken directly from the secret document. That was our first intention and still is our intention for a location in Springs. So this map you see is from Eddie Schnell's presentation. You'll see the green basically illustrates the areas that would be covered in the network. You'll see that red dot in Springs, and you'll also see that there's green there. This is basically when the network is completed, we'll have coverage in Springs. We do not now. So again, Camp Blue Bay is proposed to be the site of the new tower for Springs. It is not yet online, obviously. That is in the process of going in front of the planning board, which I'll get to eventually. But in the meantime, the town has situated a temporary cow or cell on wheels at Gann Road to assist the signal in that area. So this is the location of Camp Blue Bay. I think most people know it. Again, this is an 172 plus acre site. Obviously, there's concealment within trees. There are no issues with fall zones. There's no nearby residences or property lines. And the proposed facility, which is 185 feet, is a height sufficient to cover all of Springs for, again, emergency services communications. Obviously, there is a cell aspect of that project. Again, that's something that I'll get to in a later slide. But basically, we need Springs to complete that emergency services communication network. That's where we are on that effort right now. Moving along to personal wireless service, you can actually see these top 3 pictures here represent our Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 facilities. Well, under our proposed code changes, something I'll get to also in a second. If you don't mind, Jeremy. So this is what we're doing right now to improve cell coverage in the community. The town has completed the wireless infrastructure poll. That was done just about this time last year. The object there is to gauge community opinion on coverage, use of cell phones, design of cell towers, a number of other things. Current is the wireless code changes, as Mr. Buda had pointed out last week. We had a public hearing on that. We anticipate and hope that the town board will adopt those changes basically at an upcoming meeting, and then it has to go to Albany. Ongoing, obviously, we have a number of wireless applications from private carriers at any given point in time. We're processing those. We have a number of them pending and recently approved. I'll also get to that very shortly. And then pending is the update of the wireless master plan. That's a comprehensive vision of wireless policies throughout the town. Again, our original wireless master plan was begun in 1998. I don't need to tell anyone that the nature of cell technology and need has changed since then. So getting to one aspect of that, just going to the wireless infrastructure poll, and I won't go through it completely in depth because Cityscape already presented that to the town. But to me, I mean, there's a number of things in there, but to me, the most important are these 3 things right here. The community finds that coverage is extremely important. The community finds that coverage is poor or non-existent, and the community favored concealed facilities and using existing structures, cell towers, buildings, over new towers. But the majority did not oppose having new towers in the town. So this is just 3 slides that reflect those 3 points. I think the question here asked of the community was, is the quality of wireless service important to me? I think even if you can't see the slide very clearly, you can guess what that blue represents. That is 91% of the town agreeing entirely with that statement, identifying that wireless service is important. In fact, less than 4% of the community said that it was either neutral on it or not, it felt that it wasn't important. So this is whether or not coverage is poor or non-existent. The red and the yellow, well, the yellow there shows poor, the red shows non-existent. Obviously, the community has spoken that they feel the coverage is horrible and that we need to change that. And this slide is a little bit more difficult to tell, but this is the question asking if the community favored new towers or using existing structures for new facilities. Not unexpected. The community favored using water towers, buildings, existing towers over new towers. But you can see the red represents new towers. The town's not completely opposed to that notion. Again, that kind of relates back to the other two pie charts that you just saw, saying the coverage is horrible and that it's important. So as you know, we're in the midst of the wireless code update. It's a complete update of the town code with regard to wireless service. It was prepared by Cityscape and the Planning Department. It amends the code to meet federal and state regulations. And the standards, the specific standards we have in there on design, size of facilities, size of equipment, we based off of what we found in the wireless infrastructure poll. So again, I went over this last week, but the goals are to modernize the code. We last updated it 20 years ago. Obviously, there's been changes in technology, and as you can see from the poll, changes in community demand. We also want to maintain standards of review. Those standards need to be enforceable. We have a situation where there are other guidelines, other entities that dictate what the town, I would say can approve, but can deny, and the timeframes that they have to do that. So again, you know, we looked at in the community poll, there were shown, the community was shown different designs of different towers. We tried to reflect that in those code changes. And then the other important part is improving efficiency. We consolidated the town code from 25 sections into just a few. So it's not a scavenger hunt to find the regulations. That makes it easier for carriers and town staff to process applications and grant approvals in a timely manner. Again, something that's dictated by federal law. And it further expedites review of minor applications. We created an administrative process for what are ostensibly just swap outs and changes of equipment. A lot of that is the carriers' efforts to roll out 5G and modernize their networks. So with that, the next steps, again, we had the public hearing last week. I would anticipate and hope that the town board will adopt those code changes. If there are any amendments we need to make to those code changes, one was brought up specifically. I'll get to that at the end. Please remind me. But we're willing and happy to make those changes as soon as possible. So obviously, if the town board does adopt those code changes, just like any other code change, that will need to go to Albany. That usually takes about a month, but I'm hoping and thinking that we're on pace to adopt that complete overhaul of the wireless code sometime next month. So this is just a brief summary of new and pending applications. The first slide you see, or first paragraph you see on the left there. At any given time, we have about a dozen active co-location applications or swap outs. That's, you know, if you have an existing tower that, let's say, has two carriers, the third wants to go on, or if they already have, or if those existing carriers want to swap out their equipment, we usually have a rolling list of those going on at any time. Macro sites, the town board knows, and it was mentioned earlier, the Northwest Fire Station or brush dump property. Recently, the tower was built. That is going online. That is part of the Emergency Services Communications Network. I'm sorry if that was confusing on that previous slide where I showed those 8 components. Northwest is a node of the Emergency Services Communication Network. It will also provide personal wireless service. Again, 2 distinct things. It's part of the Emergency Services Communications Network, but we do envision that in the future, all of the major carriers will go on that tower, and it is structurally capable of handling those. Also, Stephen Hans Path was built recently. I should have mentioned Northwest is 185 feet tall, that tower. Stephen Hans is a little bit shorter. It's 110 feet. A lot of that was the discussion of the visibility from Montauk Highway, so it was reduced in height during review. But it's still sufficient to provide personal wireless service throughout that area of town, sort of eastern Wainscott, if you'd call it that. But again, that is only for personal wireless services communication. So right now we have a number of big applications that are pending. I'm not talking about swap outs and little things like that. There's actually an application going on at Hither Hills State Park for a new 100-foot tall monopole on the state's property of Hither Hills State Park. That will provide personal wireless service. I'm not sure if, some of the different state agencies, maybe the highway department is going to put whip antennas and things like that on it. But for the most part, it's for personal wireless service. That is out of our jurisdiction. That is being reviewed by state agencies.
Eric, do we know any idea what carriers they're planning to put on there?
I actually don't. I would anticipate that, there's really three major carriers. I would think that they're all going to go on it. I haven't actually seen a structural analysis or anything like that to verify that all three could go on. I suspect they can. So I'm not sure who the exact current carrier is as an applicant, but I would anticipate they'll all be on there at some point. So St. Peter's Chapel, some of you might know there was an application for a new 50-foot tall bell tower. That application actually went through a number of different design iterations, but that was denied by the planning board a few years ago. The town came to a settlement with New Singular Wireless, which is AT&T, who is the applicant. And basically that agreement is for the planning board and zoning board, if necessary, to review that proposal for a 50-foot tall monopole that would be more to the center of the property, concealed in the trees, as opposed to that original proposal, which was a new, rather imposing bell tower next to that very cute little chapel there on Old Stone. So that application was never part of emergency services communication. That was always just for personal wireless service. It still is. There's litigation that was brought on by some of the neighbors that is being resolved. We do anticipate that at some point in the near future, that will be back in front of the planning board. However, as of today, that's not the case. So then there's really two major other applications here that have been in the news. I think everybody knows about them. The Springs Fire District application, as well as Camp Blue Bay, which I alluded to a little bit earlier. And I'll get into those specifically. So this is the Springs Fire Department site plan. Obviously, the owner is the Springs Fire District. The applicant is Elite Towers. It's an application for a new 180-foot tall monopole to replace the one that you see there now, which is a 150-foot stealth monopole design, meaning all the equipment's in the inside. This is for personal wireless service. The structure physically can accommodate emergency services communication equipment, but right now that is not the town's plan. The town's plan is to site the Springs node at the original location that we proposed, which is Camp Blue Bay.
So Eric, when you say that the proposal can accommodate emergency service communication, you're talking about the proposed new tower, not the existing tower.
Yes, exactly. The existing tower, the 150-foot stealth monopole, cannot. That stealth design requires all the equipment to be in the interior. Eddie Schnell of the police department needs dishes and things of that sort that need to be mounted on the outside. That tower is structurally not physically capable of handling the emergency services communication equipment. The proposed one is physically structurally capable, but again, that is not our intention at this time. So obviously this is requires approval of the local boards, the planning board, the architectural review board, and the zoning board of appeals, for the reason that, well, I'll get to in a second. But just to give you a brief timeline of that was submitted in July of 2018. Additional information was received in November of 2019, so almost a year and a half later, and then subsequently in May of 2020. The planning board under SECRA is the lead agency. They've made a positive declaration that was made in July of 2020, which basically means that the applicants have to prepare a draft, first a draft scope for a draft environmental impact statement, which is an exhaustive review of the potential impacts of that project. The reasons, there were really three main reasons why the planning board made that positive declaration on that project. One is the impact on aesthetic resources, the visualizations showed that it was visible from scenic areas of statewide significance, most notably Accabonac Harbor. In fact, if you're on Accabonac Harbor, you can see that existing shorter 150-foot tall tower over the trees currently. Also, the impacts on historic and archaeological resources. Obviously, this site is looming over right near the Pollock Krasner House and the Springs Historic District. And then the impact on human health. And this was really one of the big aspects, big concerns of this project is that under the current town code, that project needs 30 variances due to fall zone. That's because of the proximity of neighboring residences and property lines. So the planning board received a draft scope. The draft scope is basically the outline of what the content of the environmental impact statement is going to be. The planning board approved that scope, that outline, just about this time last year. And the planning board is still waiting for that draft environmental impact statement to be submitted. That is on the applicants to provide the planning board at this point in time. This is a brief summary of the Camp Blue Bay site plan. Again, owned by the Girl Scouts of America. American Tower, which is a private third-party entity that basically is in the business of building towers for carriers, is the applicant. This is a new 185-foot tall monopole. This will provide personal wireless service and will be part of the emergency communications network. So it will improve cell coverage, and it will be, as you saw in one of those earlier slides, a vital part of the emergency services communication network. This will require approval of the planning board and the architectural review board. Both applications have been made. It does not require approval of the zoning board of appeals as it is currently proposed. It does not require any variances. So basically that was submitted just this year in May. Additional information from the applicants was recently received in early August. And just so that everybody knows, this is scheduled to be in front of the planning board at their next meeting, which is next Wednesday, September 14th. That meeting begins at 6:30. So no, the application is technically incomplete. That's the status right now. No public hearing has been scheduled. I will say that myself and Cityscape, the town's wireless consultants, are reviewing the applications. Basically, when an applicant comes in front of the planning board gives them a list of outstanding items that they need to meet in order to get a complete application and schedule a public hearing. I suspect they're very close, if not already there, but that is the discretion of the planning board. We'll find that out next week. So this is a little tough to read, but this is a map that I took from one of Cityscape's earlier presentations. And basically this is those 6 facilities that I was just talking about, kind of color coded. In red here is the Stephen Hams Path facility. This is the Northwest Fire Station. Hither Hills, obviously out here on the way to Montauk or in Montauk, depending on how you look at it. And then Camp Blue Bay, Springs Fire Department, and St. Peter's Chapel. I used that slide because, as you can kind of gather, the yellow and the green basically identifies where there is cell coverage. Again, we're on to cell coverage, not emergency services communications. And you can see that there are clear gaps in Springs and Northwest. Those are really our main gap areas in town. Obviously, with the brush dump coming online, that is going to cover a lot of Northwest. It won't cover the very extreme northern part of Northwest. It's very difficult to find sites over there. Most of it is protected parkland owned by county or state or joint county state town. And then obviously you can see the gap that everybody knows of in Springs there. And again, both, well, I should focus on wireless service here. If the Camp Blue Bay site does go online, a tower of that height, as demonstrated in the coverage maps that the applicant submitted to the planning board, that will cover a large portion of Springs, if not all of it, at least to some degree of service quality. So our wireless master plan update is really the final, I shouldn't say the final, but it's sort of the third main part of our ongoing effort to provide cell coverage throughout the town. That is pending fall of this year, so pretty soon. I've been discussing it with Cityscape. They're crafting the wireless master plan. They're very close to having a draft, I should say, because obviously this is going to go for public hearing and full public scrutiny. Again, our last wireless master plan is from 2001. The world of cell phones was completely different. There were no smartphones and many other things. So basically, the goals of the wireless master plan, we want to fill all coverage gaps in the town. We want complete 100% cell coverage throughout the town. We want to help expedite review of applications, which will fill those gaps. A large part of that effort is also the wireless code updates. And also, we want to help to offer better alternatives, both in terms of design and location for carriers in the town. The whole idea of this is being proactive as opposed to reactive. Ever since we adopted any wireless standards, the town has been reactive. An applicant, a carrier comes in, applies for a new tower, a co-location on an existing site. We review that application. We want to be more proactive. We want to identify where those coverage gaps are. We want to identify some potentially appropriate locations for new towers of maybe 100 feet covers it. Maybe we need to go up higher. And basically come up with a plan of how we're going to fill in those gaps. So that's really the remaining a big part of this, and maybe the biggest part of it, because I think that's really the best way that we're going to meet that goal of 100% cell coverage throughout the town. So basically, these are the key points of what I was just saying. Emergency service, and again, highlighting the fact that we have two different efforts that we're making here. Emergency services communications, the update of the system is nearly complete, but Springs is still the hole in that system. So as far as providing cell coverage, personal wireless service, we've completed the wireless pole. Hopefully the wireless code changes are going to be adopted very soon. We have 2 new towers that were recently built. We have active applications for macro facilities that are being processed both by the state and by the town. And again, that draft wireless master plan, a draft of it, you should be seeing very shortly. So basically, that's a summary of what the town has been doing, what the recent efforts have been to not only provide emergency services communication, but also to remedy what everybody knows is a bad situation of very poor cell coverage throughout the town, and to do so in a way that's prudent and still upholds the standards that the community and the town wants to enforce.
Thank you, Eric. The board members have any questions for Eric?
I do. So the last time Cityscape was here and gave us an update on the infrastructure, and they gave us where I think you got one of the capacity or coverage maps, and they did it by carrier and they did it for the town. How are we addressing capacity though? Like, will that be covered in the master plan? Because for instance, I live in Springs, normally I drive up Springs Fireplace Road, I have AT&T and I've got coverage, but I don't have coverage, during the height of the, or even any time during the season, because I'm assuming that it's a capacity issue. So how are we going to be, I almost think that needs to be, and now that we've, demonstrated during the housing presentations that over the last 10 years, our population has gone up a third. We've got a lot more folks living here year round. So our capacity could be flattening out at a higher level than it was a few years ago. And then you've got that giant spike, May to September.
And obviously with everyone having smartphones, being on the internet, there's much more of a data demand that is exacerbated by our summer crowd. Yes, that's something Cityscape will definitely be considering. Another thing too is there's different sort of types of coverage of whether or not you have coverage. Are you standing outside? Are you in a vehicle? Are you in a building? Those are, also factors that determine whether or not the community is going to have complete coverage. But yes, absolutely, that is something that's going to be considered. And again, I repeated it in many slides and in other presentations, but our our code, our wireless master plan was crafted at a time when this didn't exist. You didn't have people on cell phones checking their email, going on the internet. So it's something that's much needed. But yeah, the short and long answer to your question is absolutely.
And is part of this wireless master plan, they're not looking at overlaying vacant properties in the town. Are they helping us identify, well, like in their recommendation, will there be identification of where we need to put towers?
Yes.
General vicinities?
Yes, although that's really, not to turn it back on you, but it's almost more of a question for you. Because once we've identified, and we have identified the coverage gaps, we need to decide, do we want to see more sites at lower heights? Do we want to see more, one macro site in a certain area? Is that possible in an area? I brought up Northwest, where a lot of it is parkland. There's really not that many, what I would call at face value, appropriate locations for new towers of really any height. It's almost all, it's all residential, and a lot of preserved open space. So, yeah, I mean, I think what they're going to do is sort of highlight those issues in a draft, bring it to you guys, and then during the public hearing process, the community, you as council members will basically be forced to make those judgment calls of, what designs do we prefer? Where are they going to be? How are we going to tackle this problem? And where, are we going to put the new facilities to tackle that problem?
We're really in sort of an interesting predicament in that we don't provide the service that everybody wants. This is something that's provided by private sector. You sign up with whatever carrier to supply you that service. And, while we have a responsibility to be reviewing agencies for application, and that goes back to our code and our code changes, we certainly feel it's appropriate and necessary to upgrade and update our wireless plan and our communications codes to reflect changes on the ground. The FCC has had a number of changes that have taken place since our code was adopted, and that caused some conflict for our reviewing agencies and trying to review applications where our code was in conflict with FCC. So that obviously was something that we could address and have been addressing. And then we've very recently looked at the tiering of applications so that much of what was previously reviewed by planning board would become administratively reviewed by our town planning department and outside consultants. And then, again, to Kathy's point about capacity, it's not simply coverage, it's the sheer volume of data and communications that is taking place, which has only gotten to be greater since COVID, where so many people are switched to remote working schedules, to having Zoom calls, texting, emails. We're basically walking around, every one of us, with the personal computer and trying to be engaged and online all the time, everywhere we go. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when, if you broke down on the side of the road, you had to rely on the, generosity of others to catch a ride or to have someone called. We had pay phones. You might have to walk a ways to get to one. And somehow we survive, but that's not what people demand now. We're so accustomed to have instant connectivity with whoever we want to speak to, find out, a schedule, communicating with kids at a sports practice, et cetera. It's just become such an
Peter,
important
it extends even to terms of capacity and what we're using our phones for. My son and everyone his age and younger, and he's actually turned me on to it, is using my cell phone in my car to download music, to listen to music on music services even. So you've got all the things you just listed, plus all these additional uses now impacting capacity.
So I hope the public can appreciate the position we're in. We don't provide the service. We're just trying to help accommodate an improvement of the service within our jurisdiction. And it's very complicated and controversial issue where 91% of the respondents to our poll would like a improved service. That's high on their list and very important to them. How many of those same people want to be able to see that tower within their view shed? And my guess is that very few of them. And given the history of cellular macro sites, particularly, have been contentious and have generated litigation on almost every single
one.
almost every single application. I think the one example that the town was involved with recently that wasn't litigated was the Stephen Hand's Path Highway Department tower, which was relatively short tower, 110 feet, was a cell on wheels initially that we gave emergency approval for through because of COVID and the fact that there was restricted communications. And there were no objections to that particular site. Of course, there aren't any residences anywhere near it either.
Well, yeah, and there is the safety issue of the towers. It's not something that you can wipe away, worrying about where ice falls, and those fall zones are important. So for where our population lies and some of our congested neighborhoods that need the service, you have to also look at those factors as well. So, when you talk about where, I don't think it's a giant list. That's why I was wondering about the micro facilities, the small ones that
Small cell.
just go on top of telephone poles.
Well, and same here, if you can hear me, everyone.
Hi, David.
Hi, everyone. How are you? I apologize. First day of school, I have a kindergartner and I had to pick her up. So sorry, I'm zooming in today. But this is as Kathy has mentioned, we live in Springs, and it's cell phone service in Springs is extremely lacking to a point where it's potentially dangerous. But I think what Kate is hitting on is something that we have to discuss. I know we've talked about this for years, and we're starting to see it now through areas of Montauk, is that we need to I believe we need to diversify our cellular communication systems. It's not all going to be macro sites, but even with macro sites coming online, there's still going to be holes in our systems. To get that complete coverage, we might have to add the micro sites or the small cell technology, and in a way that it also might be a revenue stream if we can do it on top of infrastructure that the town owns or telephone poles as such. And that diversification is also seen in many places in Montauk, even the East Hampton, in which it could be on the side of a building, the Montauk Tower. They're in church steeples. They're actually at the Montauk Lighthouse on the Coastal Artillery battery out there then too. So a diversification, and yeah, Eric, I apologize for jumping in here, Kate, but
No, that's good, David.
are they going to be discussing, even with macro sites, what our coverage gaps might be, and how we can then overlay that with small cell or other new up and coming technologies to get into all our areas for our coverages?
Yeah, short answer, yes, absolutely. Part of the master plan as well as the wireless code updates are to encourage small cell. In fact, our code right now encourages small cell. Again, remember, it was crafted many, many years ago, and it never came to fruition. The technology really just wasn't there. We're starting to see more and more of them throughout the town. In most cases, they still need macro sites basically to relay signals and to communicate with each other. So it's not like you could just have utility pole mounted throughout the entire town and get rid of all the macro facilities. But yes, we would like to see that technology incorporated, as much as possible where appropriate. To Mr. Supervisor, to your point earlier, just kind of adding to it, the town actually, the geography of the town, both just the physical dimensions of the town, but also the zoning, make this a pretty unique challenge. Obviously, everybody knows our commercial centers, but when you look at a map of the town, most of the town is residential or open space. we don't want to put macro facilities near residences, or we're not going to on open space that's preserved. Problem is, you were making the point of, people don't want, macro facilities near them. Problem is, if you got to get coverage to people, the tower's got to be near them. So, you end up with this kind of catch-22 situation, but that's what this endeavor is. That's what we're going to try to solve. And I'm confident that we can within the coming years.
So one of the things that's missing from this conversation, in my opinion, are the carriers themselves. And I think we should probably invite some representatives to the major carriers here to give us, their perspective on how to solve this problem. Because, as we've said, we don't propose them, the sites per se. We're not the ones providing cellular service. And I think hearing from them as to what kind of plans they may have, how they can address the issues that our residents are having in a meaningful way would be important. So, I would like to invite some representatives of major carriers and for that discussion and presentation, just the state of cell service within our township, and how do you see us moving forward?
So I had a consumer question, which is kind of along those same lines. And things that I'm hearing in the community are, well, I used to use X carrier and it doesn't work at my house anymore. And what's happened? And I can't provide that answer for them. I don't know. So then they'll say, I have to switch to another carrier. And, that may not be as
capacity, I think.
I think
I have an
mostly it
AT&T phone and a Verizon work phone, and it's capacity.
So I've noticed that as well, where, I have good cellular service when the population's low, in the middle of winter sometimes, no problem at all receiving calls. Leaves are up trees, but also just the capacity is down, and the demand is down rather. And, it makes a big difference. I mean, I could receive calls that my phone doesn't ring and I see I have a voicemail because it never made the connection. Too much demand.
We'd like to be able to eventually provide 100% service for all the carriers, and Cityscape has already mapped coverage by the three major carriers. But also, hopefully we can do that, because it's almost a fight that I think the town doesn't want to be in, with saying, okay, that tower, Verizon's the only one that can go there and provide coverage. We don't want to be in the middle of that, business fight between them. We want to be able to have avenues where all of each one of them can fill in their coverage gap. But that's also something I thought about too, is that, I had a slide here from Cityscape's presentation from about a year ago. They were very intentionally, they did not identify the names of the carriers when they said carrier A, theoretical carrier this. So that's another issue. That's another reason why it would be great to have, representatives of the individual carriers here to join in that discussion. But yeah, that's also something that, I just flag right now for your concern moving forward.
Well, we certainly should encourage, if not require, that any new macro sites be able to house all major carriers on them.
Mm-hmm.
So, Mr. Supervisor, I hope this is on. I just want to go back to your comment a moment ago about how quickly can we begin to engage with the private sector to bring some solutions to the table here. We've actually begun that process. So with the code changes that you all have had a look at, we actually got some outreach from at least one of the private carriers saying, look, we've taken a look at your current code. We have a bunch of questions, and we were able to share with them the proposed changes even before they were adopted, seeking their comments in addition to Cityscape. That was actually a very useful exercise. And so the idea that we've kicked around in the department is, once we can get through the process, hopefully, of an updated set of code changes, we would like to then, with your blessing, reach out directly to the individual carriers, the three main ones, notify them of the updated code, and let them know exactly where we are in the master planning process for all of the reasons that you just described. we see our role in the planning department, and I think more broadly for the town, as being creating enabling conditions. So really what we're able to do is identify need, identify location, create the review mechanisms, expedite review where appropriate under the new code, and then allow the market to have that information and work directly with us to bring about solutions. So I think you're looking at us as a municipality transitioning from an old framework and an old set of rules to a much more streamlined and updated set of frameworks here that will allow us to move applications through the process more quickly and with a refined code that gives people clearer guidance about how what we're requiring locally in terms of review and citing actually aligns with and supports the federal mandates that are really the governing statutes here.
So if I just may quickly add in another technology that I don't know if it'll be effective or how we take a look at it, but I'm talking because I purchased a new vehicle and it's by subscription, it's a Wi-Fi hotspot. And I know that for some reason, and I have no idea why, my service is better through that than many times it is when I have no bars. And I don't know if, looking at a community Wi-Fi would help with our communication and capacity and coverage gaps. So that's just some thought for the future. Because I believe that technology is changing too. And I know communities are looking into, with the infrastructure bill and perhaps money coming down the line, looking into what a community Wi-Fi looks like. And I don't know if they use towers. I have no clue how that happens.
Yeah, that's absolutely something that Cityscape is going to consider. That came up when they were giving their presentations. But yeah, Wi-Fi is definitely, a part of this equation.
Yeah, because when I'm in my house, I hook my phone up to my Wi-Fi.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And a lot of people do now.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
Do we want to have Eric respond to Mr. Buda's questions?
On setback.
Setbacks?
In fact, actually, also, if you'd like, I have what Jeremy was talking about was a letter from one of the carriers. It's something that I didn't bring up last week at the code changes, just because I respect their opinion, and I'm happy that they responded. We sent them all the code changes as they were laid out, as they were noticed to the public. There were 4 points that this carrier made. One was that we currently have in the code, and we carried it over, something that basically says if a property owner is in arrears on their taxes or has, some financial situation they need to remedy with the town, we won't consider their application. That's something that exists now. We carried it over with different wording. We've never invoked that in an application. So it's something that just has never come up. So I didn't even, first of all, Cityscape's recommendation is to keep that. But I didn't think that was too substantive. The other is that they think that we should not have avoidance areas in our criteria for new wireless facilities. I disagree with that in principle. I think that's a big part of the update, is identifying where, in general, appropriate sites are, tree masses, concealed existing facilities, and avoidance areas. We don't want them looming over properties. We don't want them on open space. We don't want them in flood zones. Their point is that, we need to be able to consider every location if we're going to fill our coverage gap. There's nothing in the wireless code changes that we've offered that prevents them from doing that. We're just directing carriers into where appropriate locations are and where inappropriate locations are. The other is about a legal decision with the FCC. Basically, you've probably heard this term or this phrase before of the town. Where there's a coverage gap, the town needs to approve something, but the town can choose the least obtrusive method of remedying that gap. They're basically saying that legal precedent doesn't back that up. I've heard from our legal staff and from the legal staff of Cityscape that is not the case. And I think that just completely abandoning that would basically leave the town with no authority over reviewing applications. The fourth is very reasonable, and I totally agree with it, that they're saying that if we are going to be moving forward with a third party, and in the case right now, Cityscape, reviewing applications and crafting plans, that the town's fees for applications should be reflective of what that costs, as opposed to being onerous or something of that sort. So I did want to mention that, and Jeremy brought it up. So I just want to hit those points very quickly. Mr. Buda's comment at which he reiterated here today and mentioned at the public hearing, he raises a very good point. His point is about the standards that we have in the new code regarding fall zones, essentially, setbacks from property lines for new towers. The wording that's in the code that was noticed is, and I quote, new wireless structures shall have a setback equal to the height of the proposed structure. Now, the supervisor had mentioned this last week, that the intention there is to do away with the double fall zone requirement, take twice the 100-foot tower, 200 feet currently under the code. You need to be away from a habitable building or area where people congregate, and you can't have a property line within 1 times the height of the tower. With Cityscape has advised us that 2 times fall zone requirement is, first of all, physically not necessary, but also somewhat of a dinosaur in the world of regulations. The 1-time setback requirement should be sufficient to protect people. That being said, I agree that the wording of that is a little bit vague on that, and that's why that did need some clarification. I'll also point out, at one point there was an example given of this tower right here, saying that under our current code you can't have a habitable structure. A habitable structure is not just one that you can walk in. It's one that has living units in it under our town code. So technically, that wouldn't be the case here. But an alternative wording that I could suggest would be, again, quote, new wireless structure shall have a setback from adjoining property lines equal to or greater than the height of the proposed structure. But that's really just a clarification of what the original point was, which is basically we're going with you can't have a property line within the height of the tower, and that's the sole setback requirement. I can't remember if there was another comment that I needed to address.
I had the setback.
Sorry?
I had the setback question for Mr. Buda noted.
Eric, you asked us to remind you that there was a change. Is that the change that you
Yes,
wanted?
that was it. Yeah, thanks for the reminder.
Anything else?
So if we make that change, that would be a minor change.
Yeah, I was
correct?
gonna say, so I don't think it's substantive. It's just,
It's really a rewording of
Clarify,
the
yeah.
original point.
So is the plan to have that code change up for adoption on the 15th?
I think that's the next opportunity, isn't it?
Yeah.
Unless we
Yes,
have it in
did.
our work session.
Okay.
I see no reason why we can't have that on for adoption. Take a vote. Thank you very much, Eric. Carl, you had signed up for public comment and then wish to withhold your comments until after the presentation. So go ahead and may address the board. Just please state your name for the record.
Thank you. Carl Iris, attorney, East Hampton, New York, and I represent the Springs Fire District Board of Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to participate in this matter. I had a couple of things I wanted to share with the board because we have a new council member and a new local law. I don't want to presume its adoption, but things look good. The commissioners wanted me to remind the board of their offer to use the firehouse site, its existing pole, or join the pending site plan application in any way that helps facilitate the important process that you're undergoing, whether that's for a cow or any other temporary equipment or for permanent equipment. In addition, based on the earlier comments about the bonding, I iterate that the commissioners and their contractor offer to cover much of the costs related to the firehouse site. The firehouse site can accommodate just over 100 feet of a 100-foot tall tower without any dimensional relief. And with its central location and the existing elevation of the site, plus existing communications infrastructure, existing clearing, and the fact that we're offering this at little or no cost to the town, we hope that these details will be attractive to the town for you to consider as you continue your review of this.
185 feet.
So, Carl, can I just ask you, is the response from the fire department to the planning board application, is that
Underway?
yeah, are you in the process of actually completing that submission? It's been, I think, a little over a year now. So it's the intent for the fire department to move forward with the application?
I don't have the exact date on the scoping, but yes, we're in the midst of secret review and secret compliance. And yes, we're moving forward with
All
our
right.
application.
I'm glad to hear that.
And
I
it's
just
still
wasn't
at
sure.
180?
Yeah, what is this?
Because you just said it
100.
could be 100, so.
Thanks for asking. So the existing application was designed with input from the town to accommodate the police equipment. And that height was at roughly 100 and some odd, 180 feet. So that's the current pending application before the site plan, for site plan review by the town board.
Planning board.
Planning board, yeah.
Thank you. It's a bit of alphabet soup with these things.
Yes.
Thank you. So when I mentioned a 100-foot tower, that was something that we discovered and brought to the town board's attention last summer when the town was considering different types of cow sites for temporary equipment. There's one currently at Gann Road, and we. Based on our review of this, our site, we could site a 100-foot tower in approximately the middle of the lot, and it wouldn't have needed with the current existing code, it would only have needed double fall zone setback relief. If the town code is amended, then we wouldn't have a double setback issue, and it would conform with other dimensional
The
requirements.
180 foot
the
wood or the
100
100 foot wood?
100.
Well,
The 100.
if it's for emergency use only, I believe it's a single setback.
I'd have to review with the fact of the matter is, this has come up in a couple of different ways, but just to make the point clear, the current status of fire department response relies heavily upon wireless equipment. Our pole, the pole that's proposed at the firehouse that's getting site plan review, does accommodate wireless equipment. A 100-foot tower would accommodate wireless equipment. The fire department uses wireless equipment not only in its own dispatching for members and personnel, but the fact of the matter is an overwhelming amount of 911 calls are placed by 911. So from the fire department, from the fire department's perspective, in many ways, wireless communications and emergency telecommunications by radio are almost coterminous. They almost mean.
So what are you going to be applying for? I am confused. Is it 180? Is it 100? Are you going to have two applications that are going in parallel? And is one just for emergency and one for emergency plus?
We only have a single pending application for a 180-foot tower to accommodate police equipment and wireless equipment and fire equipment.
Okay.
Though I'm here to remind you of an offer that we made a year ago that we could accommodate a 100-foot pole that would help the board achieve some of its goals. It would help the fire district achieve some of its emergency response goals.
Would that, you're saying that would be not just emergency, that would also be cellular, that offer includes cellular?
It would have room for cellular on that.
Okay. And how would that take place? I mean, you'd submit for an application with the planning board for that?
I think to rewind to about a year ago, the town was considering extending the application of the emergency powers doctrine to allow for certain cell cow sites. And we were asking if the town was interested we were asking the board to extend that to us so that the temporary site wouldn't go through the same.
That would be through an emergency declaration by the town supervisor.
Yeah, which as you'd know better than I, but I think that was being contemplated for certain other sites. So that's the context of that.
Yeah, we've done that once only, and that was during the height of COVID with a pending application at the highway department site. They were on the edge of approving a permanent 110-foot tower, and we approved a temporary. And one of the things about that emergency declaration is that you can only invoke it for the period of time which the emergency exists. So essentially, as soon as you have put it up, you've eliminated that need. So it would have to come back down. So in the Stephen Hand site, the permanent site went online, and therefore the cow was discontinued.
Right. And in the meantime, we're still working on secret compliance for the poll.
Understood. I'm glad to hear that we can expect an application submission.
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
I said I'm pleased to hear that we can expect a further application submission by the fire department.
Yeah, we the opportunity created by the new local law that we're expecting to be passed definitely seemed like it was a change in circumstance that would warrant some sort of reconsideration, and commissioners wanted the board and the public to know that we're on board with trying to cooperate to help any way we can. We think we've got a great site. We think we have a strong application. We think there are some critical advantages to our site that don't exist at others, and we wanted to make sure that everybody remembered that.
Thank you, Carl.
All right. Thanks for your time today.
Be well. Our next agenda.
Jeremy's got a comment.
Just a number that I hope the board will find useful. Following up on Mr. Irace's comments, I believe the variances that would be required should the code change that is contemplated come into place. Mr. Irace is correct that the current number of 30 would drop. It would not be eliminated. There would still be a minimum, we believe, of at least 6 variances that would be required for that.
And that's for a 180-foot tower for personal wireless.
Correct. Just 2 other, I'm sorry?
100, if you reduced it to 100.
If you reduced it
Sorry, but
Okay.
to 100. Okay, so
30 now, 180.
okay, so the additional piece of information I want to share is, I think if I heard Mr. Irace correctly, he offered that the town could have access from the commissioners to the current pole. And I just want to clarify for everybody that our understanding is the current pole does not meet any of the specs that would be required to host the town's emergency equipment. So I just want to have good information out there that clarifies that. In addition, our understanding from Eddie Schnell, who, as you all know, does this work designing these systems and maintaining them on behalf of the police department, is that a 100-foot tower would not meet the minimum spec requirements for hosting the emergency communications equipment. So I just wanted you to have that additional information.
So there's no line of sight for the microwave link.
Correct.
Primarily. Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. Our next topic is the Montauk Inlet dredging environmental assessment for. We have Brian Frank here, senior environmental planner. As the board knows, the Lake Montauk Inlet dredging is a federally sponsored project to increase the depth of the inlet, to improve the safety of vessels traversing the Montauk Inlet, which is New York's #1 fishing port. Brian, take it away.
Good morning, Mr. Pardon me. Good morning, Mr. Supervisor, board members. Happy Tumbleweed Tuesday, if that still exists. So we have discussed this project a couple of times recently, and as the supervisor had mentioned, Lake Montauk is the only federally maintained navigational channel in the town. It has had a design parameter of a 12-foot depth and 150-foot width with a 50-foot deposition basin, probably since its inception, but for at least the last 70 years. Dredging is done on an average of every 4 to 5 years. There are times when circumstances require emergency dredging. The sand that's produced from those dredging events, the dredging is conducted hydraulically, and that sand is pumped along Soundview Drive, just west of the inlet, around a 1,200 linear foot stretch. As we discussed last month, it has become pretty clear over the years that 12-foot depth is no longer adequate for a number of reasons. On the peak of the summer, over 500 boats use the inlet every day. There have been a number of groundings, including as many as 9 groundings of unloaded commercial vessels leaving the inlet. That's not weighted down with fish and ice coming into port. That's leaving, usually on a falling tide, but there's a lot of traffic going on in that area. And in the federal feasibility study, the Corps estimated a loss of over $2.3 million a year without improvements to the inlet. There was a plan, as I'm sure Supervisor Van Scoyac and Councilwoman Overby remember from the 2013 time period. That was a different recommended plan. Very different. This is a much better plan for a number of reasons. The town has continued to work with the Corps throughout that time period. This is a project that's much more closely in line with the local waterfront revitalization plan, more consistent with best management practices, and it keeps the priority on making navigational safety and its improvements the priority. That recommended plan would increase the design depth from 12 feet to 17 feet at mean low water. It increases the width of the deposition basin from 50 feet to 100 feet. That dredging will occur. It's presumed it's going to occur very similar to how it's done now, similar staging areas, similar cutting head dredge. That's going to pump a larger volume of sand, initially 174,000 cubic yards along a larger stretch of Westlake Drive. It'll be spread out along roughly 3,000 linear feet in an undesigned beach, about 40 feet wide, with an elevation of 9 feet above sea level that'll taper down at a 1-to-20 slope. And that has the incidental benefits of providing some coastal storm protection to Soundview Drive and Captain Kidd's Path, eventually even potentially Culloden Point's headlands as well. Thank you. That's from the feasibility study. You can see this. I don't know how well the colors show up there. But, you can see the dark area here. This is the existing navigational channel, and this light blue area is the existing deposition basin. This area is part of the navigational channel in Queensbrook Cove, but it hasn't been maintained by the Corps of Engineers for a very long time. And it's a very different dynamic here. It's not anticipated that you have the amount of sand that you have in the inlet. It's unclear if this were ever to be dredged again by the feds, if it could be done hydraulically. It really is kind of a different animal from the rest of the inlet. There's a lot of similarity between what has been going on in past practices and what's proposed in the recommended plan. The footprint is almost identical with the exception of the 50-foot increase in the deposition basin. The dredging intervals will increase from an average of 4 to 5 years to 7 years. And in those subsequent cycle, it's obviously going to produce less sand, an estimated 56,000 cubic yards of sediment that will also be placed on those downdrift beaches to the west of the inlet. So we're to the point where we're up to the next steps. There is a project partnership agreement that explains the roles and responsibilities of the town as the non-federal sponsor and the Corps of Engineers as the federal sponsor for this project. Planning and legal have been reviewing the PPA for quite a while. We believe it's ready for adoption by the town board and signature by the supervisor. The planning department has prepared a full environmental assessment form, part 2, to fulfill our SEQA requirements. The planning department recommends that the town board assume lead agency for the project. The draft EAF has been circulated. The planning department has not identified any potentially significant adverse environmental impacts that would warrant the preparation of an environmental impact statement, and the department recommends the issuance of a negative declaration pursuant to secret. After the project partnership agreement is signed and sent up to the Corps, that'll trigger another series of events. We'll continue to work with the Army Corps of Engineers on obtaining some of the housekeeping items, the easements that may be required for the sand placement, and other matters to keep the project on track. It is hoped that the Corps will be in a position to put this out to bid next summer, which would allow the dredging to commence in the beginning October 2023. The dredging is usually done, if not, maybe with the exception of some emergencies, late fall, early winter in the least biologically active time period for some of the species that are either transient or residents of the Lake Montauk Inlet area. So with that, if anybody has any questions that I can answer, I'd be happy to try.
Board members have any questions for Brian?
How certain are you of the date starting October 1, 2023? Sorry. I know.
Optimistic.
You're
Oh,
optimistic.
that's good.
Okay.
We are optimistic.
All right.
And I mean, the dredging is something that's occurred in the past as a maintenance dredging project. This is obviously a bit bigger in terms of the quantities.
Yes.
You know, our task to try and keep this online is to take a vote on whether or not to adopt the environmental, the SECRA determination. And that triggers, as Brian said, a number of other events that would allow me to sign on to the partnership agreement. And we will be required to contribute some funding up front. It's a 10% local share.
Thank you. I know that was in the slide.
727,000 or something like that.
400.
And 400. Yeah.
Construction costs are shared, 90% federal, 10% non-federal. The future maintenance costs are 100% federal.
So,
as they are
yeah,
now.
in addition to the obvious benefits of having the depth increased in the channel for navigation, there's the benefit of having additional sand placed on the downdrift side of the inlet, the western portion of that stretch from the inlet down towards Captain's Kidd, which is, as you know, it's a high energy zone. It's an area prone to erosion. I think the annual rate of erosion there is almost 2 feet, 1.7 feet. This gives a window at least for some maybe further enjoyment. The public does tend to utilize that area close to the Gosman's parking lot, where the sand has retained itself somewhat the last couple of years, but this will be an additional benefit both to property owners and town residents and visitors alike. So I'm optimistic as Brian is as well. And I think this is a project that will benefit us, and we're happy to see it finally getting to a point where commitments are being made and follow through.
And the Corps does seem genuinely anxious to move on to the next step. So I think that's some of the basis for that optimism.
Good.
I remember discussing
hear.
this in 2014 at the Montauk Firehouse,
I
where we
remember
had
discussing this in 2012.
5 options spelled out.
Yeah,
But,
it's come a long way
as
since
Brian
then.
said, there have been a lot of iterations of this, that,
Much improved.
This is the much improved plan, and it's really moved forward. And I do think that we could expect a timeline at or very close what's been presented.
I went through the EAF and I agreed with everything that you did. So I'm supportive of it. And happy
I am as well.
vote on it.
So we'll
So
have
am I.
that,
It's very thorough and it's a project that's needed. Thank you, Brian.
we'll have that up for a vote at the next public meeting. Thanks very much, Brian.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
That brings
Thank you,
us up
Jeremy.
to liaison reports.
Okay, great. So first, I was just going to start off on a fun note. We had the annual senior center picnic last week. It was supposed to be at Fresh Pond, but due to mosquitoes and ticks, it got moved to the senior center.
and we all got to participate, and they made it a joyous event, even though it wasn't in the, natural environment. They had beach balls hanging from the ceiling and pails and with Lay's potato chips, my favorite, in the center, and started with root beer floats and hamburgers and hot dogs and baked beans and corn and watermelon. And it was a great event. And the supervisor played with the band with Judge Tukulski and Sandy Posnick, and we had a cameo appearance by Gabriela Gallier, our legislative secretary, on vocals, and it was as I said, it was a joyous event. I know everybody enjoyed it.
Gabriella has a beautiful voice. We're glad to play with her at any time. It's the first time I played publicly since COVID.
Wow.
It's been a long time.
That is a long time.
Coming. That was a lot of fun. And as you said, Kathy, a lot of fun had by all. And it was great to see our fellow town board members going around serving the seniors and socializing once again. The folks there were very appreciative. I've got a number of email responses from people saying how great it was to get together and how much fun they had. And to, again, thank town board members, for our response during COVID and all that we've done for seniors through that period of time. And I want to take the opportunity to especially thank Councilwoman Kathy Burke-Gonzalez, who heads up the Human Services Department as our liaison, and all the great work that you've done there over several years now.
They've got a great team over there, and the seniors, really appreciate it. And it's a very loving environment.
Yeah, I did want to add to thank the staff, both the folks that prepared the food and just the atmosphere that was set was phenomenal.
We also had a workshop over there last Wednesday. It was a hands-on design workshop with R2 Architecture. It was attended by Jeremy and Eric, Diane Patrizio and myself, and Nicole O'Donnell. Basically, it was a 4-hour charrette, and it was broken down into 2 segments. The first segment is they had a huge printout of the property. And what we did was we came up with a number of ways of like how to situate the building. We thought about the exposure and natural light, the natural environment, parking, circulation. So we did that and came up with a number of different designs on the property. And then we went into a charrette basically on the interior of the building, what needs to be near each other, how will the building flow. And, it was a great afternoon. Eric is going to draft a memo for R2 to just review what the setbacks are on the property due to the zoning and whatnot. And R2 will begin their schematic design phase, which will take about 8 weeks. And then later this month, we have a meeting. Kate is going to be joining us, as well as Natural Resources, the Planning Department, and Human Services. And we're going to be talking about the sustainability. We're going to be bringing in the different subcontractors and do that. And that one is going to be a virtual meeting. Even though this is Tumbleweed Tuesday, we all know, we look at our calendars that there are a lot of events still to happen this coming weekend. We've got the Montauk Seafood Festival on Saturday and Sunday on the Montauk Green. They had needed a new location, and the special event committee thought that the green would be appropriate. So we're working with them. That's sponsored by the Kiwanis Club and the Friends of Erin. The East Hampton Aviation Association has Plain Fun Day on Saturday from 10 to 3. The East Hampton Farm Museum has their Bonnet Barbecue and Square Dance on Sunday from 2 to 5. The Art Center at Duck Creek has, openings this weekend. We've got the Hamptons Festival of Music at LTV, and they have a companion visual art festival with that. And then we're starting to get the Special Events Committee starting to get applications for major filming out here. It's the shoulder season and whatnot. So we're inviting, the producers to come in, the scouts. And in fact, it's a movie that they're looking to film out here. They're coming in on Wednesday so that we can go over, and typically the chief assigns a lieutenant as the liaison from the police department so that they can work through that. The other thing I wanted to just talk about was, we've sent out postcards for those folks that had beach driving permits. Some received them in the mail, some they were not. We sent them, certified mail return receipt requested. Some got returned here to the town. They are in the town clerk's office. So folks, if you haven't received your postcard, which acts as your permit through the end of the year, please call the clerk's office at 631-324-4142. They've got a couple of boxes of them now. They're alphabetized, and folks can call and we can see if your permit's been returned, or it could still be going through the post office. We mailed over 11,000 postcards, and it was overwhelming for our local post offices here. So
11,000.
11,000.
Over
And
11,000.
So some of them, are still within the postal service and haven't been delivered yet, but others have already come back to us. So again, call the town clerk's office if you're looking for your postcard, which serves as your beach driving permit at 631-324-4142.
Yeah, we did meet with Director Distributors, who is our outside mail company, and the U.S. Postal Service representatives on a call. They expect that all of those cards that will either be delivered or those that are undeliverable should be returned by the end of this week.
Oh, good.
We have a full manifest of all the mailings and the status of each, but we have fulfilled our obligations under the court order to provide those cards, the notification to all permit holders. Sylvia?
Did you skip? Is
You
David?
want David? to
Oh,
go
I'm sorry.
first?
Out of sight, out of mind. I'm just looking at the vacant seat between Kathy and I.
All good,
Go
my
ahead,
friend.
David. You have a liaison report for us?
I do, and as I mentioned earlier, my biggest thing right now, school's in session, everyone. I know we mentioned this quickly on Thursday. Everyone just relax on those rows. Let these little kids get to school and where they need to be. Some of them have never been to school before, so they're trying to figure their ways out, biking or walking. So everyone just relax. And please do not pass the school bus with the flashing lights on. It's illegal. You could ticket it, and you might get anyway. It's just don't do it. Okay. Stay away from that, please. Let's give our youth out here a chance to get to school, do everything they need to do to make East Hampton so great. A couple small things for everyone. I want to let the town board know that the Water Quality Technical Advisory Committee did meet. They're reviewing the request for applications for round 2 for 2022. We'll probably just have this on and recommendations on a town board work session. I think we're going to do that on the 20th upcoming then too. And there are numerous applications, and we'll be hearing that shortly from Melissa Winslow and the team there. I heard from the state, the Department of Land Management in New York State. Tom Dess and others have been working with State Assemblyman Thiel's office. The infestation of Gnat Peak has only blown up and grown tremendously. They're going to be sending their state forest loggers or fellers out here starting potentially next week. We're thinking on the 12th. So there'll be work on that area of Gnat Peak, which has gone a little bit to everywhere. And if you drive out the Gnat Peak, you'll see hundreds, if not thousands, of dead trees happening right now, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So I want to let the board know that.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta for the general public, I want to let everyone know we heard from the MTA that the Long Island Railroad will not be operational from 10:15 p.m. to 3:30 a.m. For Tuesday through this Thursday, which means into Friday morning. There will be bus services. Anyone that's used to that service, please check out the LIRR. Beach closures. We are at Tumbleweed Tuesday, as we just heard. Currently, the only beaches that will be guarded are only on the weekends, and there'll be Atlantic Avenue, South Edison, and Dish Plains in Montauk right now. We are still looking for guards to potentially do Indian Wells. Those are the 3 that'll be operational right now. I do have to say that we have a very strong team of East Hampton Town lifeguards. They saved individuals off duty, on duty, with others then too. And our town lifeguards did amazing work. And the town is the place, if you want a lifeguard, to work for John Ryan and others right now in the town of East Hampton. Please contact John Ryan, because we're already looking at 2023 right now. And they did a wonderful job as a team, the place to be for our summers and always protecting our waters. We will have a beach advisory group meeting shortly. We'll probably come with an exit meeting maybe early October for the board then too. So thank you to our town lifeguards. I had a meeting with Steve Long, the director of the East Hampton Historical Society, and another representative from their subcommittee about the Marine Museum, and looking at some of their long-range plans there. There's not moss on the stone, but it's still moving head forward to see how they want to reinvent, invigorate, and others to the Marine Museum, what the town might have to do to make it ADA compliant, and also in better working shape for them then too. So that was a nice meeting with them. Just let the board know that that's still moving forward. I want to thank Kathy, and I also want to thank Kate for coming to the skate park opening. Peter and Sylvia, you have supported, you were there also, and you supported the skate park since the beginning. And last Friday on the 26th, it was the skate park was open. I want to thank everyone from the Montauk Skate Park Coalition. I go back there every other day, and there's 30, 40 people skateboarding up there still from morning to nighttime. It's great. We're tweaking it. It's just such a great addition to the town's recreational opportunities. The entire board has been supportive of initiatives in recreation. This one just worked out really well. So to all the town board members, I want to thank you very much for your support, and to the community support then too. It is a resource that is going to be actively used by all. If you go up there, enjoy yourself, then too, as a community, we should be very proud.
David, I want to thank you as a liaison for leading the charge and really shepherding that project from beginning to end. Was really a remarkable effort on behalf of the coalition, and coordinating with the town, the state, to get that done. And everybody's really enthusiastic and exuberant about the outcome. Fantastic job.
Thank you, Peter. I appreciate that. But as humble as I am, without you and the rest of the board, it wouldn't have been there. Wouldn't have gotten done. But it shows what good government, working with a good community, what we can do for everyone right now. And I think that's why we all sit at this dais right now for days and projects like this. And there's more to come with this group of council persons right now.
David, if I could say it, and I've said this to you before, this really was a case study in public-private partnership. It was incredible. And I have already been lobbied for a water fountain up there.
Yes.
Yeah, we're going to get that done. That's a necessary addition, and something we realize needs to be there. You know, a bottle refill station like we have here, and water fountain will be well used, no doubt.
Yeah, no,
I just want to thank the people that donated. I mean, what a generous community to be able to donate the amount of funds that they did, and so they need to be thanked as well.
Agreed. In the project, there's so much from Jeannie Carrozza, Becky Hansen, to others in our buildings and grounds department that supported this project, or got this project all the way through to the finish line. It was great to work on then too. And here's the next one. With that, what I want to say also is about youth sports. Okay, to the general public. I got daughters in high school. I got daughters in spring school. I don't have daughters in Montauk daycare anymore. And there's a
moving along.
Moving along. Youth sports are happening right now. Montauk, Springs, and East Hampton. At the high school also, we got great teams of Joey McKee on coaching football. We have great field hockey players, boys and girls, volleyball, soccer, track and field. Go out and see these kids play. Cheer them on in the upcoming seasons right now then to participate. They might not know you, but they will hear you loud, and just participate in our community. It's a fun thing to show the kids that you care, and they crave it then too. So if I could say anything to them, to the general community, if you have something to do between 3:30 and 5:30 on a game day, go enjoy. Contact the schools for that. Anyway, that's my liaison report. Nice to see everyone. Maybe not in person, but it's happy to participate through Zoom. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Sylvia, you have a liaison report?
I do. The first thing I want to talk about is our business committee, which actually meets tomorrow. But a very active member of our business community, of our business committee, Steve Huwili, passed away 2 weeks ago. And I just wanted to recognize him. He owned Word Hampton and was an invaluable member of the business committee, especially during the pandemic, sort of those darkest days of the pandemic, when he had some really helpful ideas for us as we moved forward and how to communicate with our fellow citizens and especially our businesses. And, he's highly respected, and he will be missed by not only our committee, but the entire community. I just want to thank him and condolences to his family. So moving on to the Wainscott Tree Society, this is a new group that kind of came out of the Wainscott CAC. They have associated themselves with the Sewing Society, using them as a 501c3. And so we've had meetings off and on. I go to as many as I can. They're getting ready to do some of their fundraising, buying trees and finding appropriate places for the trees. Over the past 10 years, 22 trees on Main Street in Wainscott have come down.
Mm-hmm.
So either through storms or through disease or through other, even some pruning incorrectly. If you look at where they were pruned for PSE and G to go through lines, that it has weakened the trees. So I was hoping that we would consider, I've talked to Becky Hansen about putting in our budget for the highway department something for a consultation fee. They already have a line, and we could increase that line a bit so that we could have arborists come. The village of East Hampton uses someone to help them. And I think in conjunction with some of the folks that are in all of our different hamlets, Montauk Village Association, the Amagansett Village Improvement Society, all of these groups work with trees. And so the Wainscott Tree Society would also like to do something, not only in getting the trees planted, but then the maintenance costs and any time that they needed pruning, that there would be someone that would help them. I want to shout out to Kevin Cobb at the Highway Department, who's been great in the last couple of months. We've been seeing some of these trees coming down, and he has pointed out rightly that they were either overstressed, that they were planted improperly. One of them on, I think on Fieldview, that has come down, was planted with the burlap ball still around it, so that it grew up to a point and then it couldn't, it couldn't go any further. So it died. There was also one on Abrams Landing and Amagansett that's coming down. So I think we need to consider some of this as part of our budget and help Kevin do the great job that he's been doing. So that I'd like to put that ahead of time and thinking.
It's already in the mix. So
okay.
I did also receive a letter from the Wainscott Tree Society making a request that we consider engaging a certified arborist for consultations on various trees, and I'm happy to do that. And we can find the money for that as a case by case basis. I think I don't know about. We do have some great staff in the highway department, but having some outside consultation from a certified arborist would be helpful, I think, in some cases. We saw that in Amagansett on a couple of trees there, making assessments. Land management has also had requests on a number of cases to take a look at trees that are on preserves neighboring residential properties where there was some question about whether the tree might come down on the residents or not. And so it's something that we do need to deal with. And it seems maybe more frequently now, given the amount of stress that trees have been under. And we've seen a change in our environment. David mentioned the expansion of the southern pine beetles and that peak stretch. And, that's a pretty monolithic pine forest, and that infestation is going to spread right through that like a slow moving fire. But there are other trees that are stressed. Our beech trees are stressed by nematodes. We have the spotted lanternfly is making its way east. We need to be worried about that. So,
I mean, just the drought alone is
Mhm.
going to be
Exactly.
stressing the trees. I know it's raining today, but if we haven't had many of these days, so it's really going to, and you can see that some of the leaves are already
I think
falling.
we're almost 9 inches below normal
Yeah,
rainfall
so
at this
that's-
point in the year.
That's not healthy. So I'm happy to hear that
Yeah,
things are in
I
the
think-
works. I've also talked to Becky and so I'm glad to hear that there's support for it. The Architectural Review Board, you should have all received a letter from the Architectural Review Board that talked about the restoration, rehabilitation, and design development of the Brooks Park buildings. And I just want to read one paragraph. This is from ARB members Kathleen Cunningham, Esperanza Leone, Diane Benson, and Frank Gittard in favor of preservation. And they said, quote, we applaud the town board's recognition of this critical piece of East Hampton's history and of the contributions made by James Brooks and Charlotte Park to the history of art, specifically the abstract expressionist movement. By preserving and rehabilitating these noted artists' homes and studios in Springs, the town will complete an important preservation initiative begun in 2014 when the buildings were designated historic landmarks. So the letter goes on, and you should all have a copy, and I hope that we can, their recommendation is to get a historic preservationist to look at the buildings. So I'd like to try to move that forward if we can go out for an RFP for a historic preservationist if needed, or whatever is needed to move forward with that.
Yeah, I think that would be the next step, is to go out for a bid.
Great. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. Kate?
Yes, I have a few notes. One is the Kim Shaw, Sam Klein, myself, and Lena from the Energy Sustainability Committee. We had a further meeting with the consultants who are working on the 100% fossil fuel free, which is what I'm going to call from now on, roadmap for our town. So we're still in the process of developing that map, and they right now are still gathering data on our town's energy use and where the hot spots may be and where they can make meaningful recommendations for change to reduce our fossil fuel usage. The Energy Sustainability Committee itself met and discussed the grant we have just won regarding recycling and how we, and further from that, how we can encourage composting. They have some, they've been given some in-home devices if you can't have a composting garden that does another method of being able to reduce food waste, which is one of the most significant areas that we have issues with when it comes to really waste and what we do with our recycling and the impacts on using fossil fuels for that. They are now working on, after their successful electric vehicle webinar, in producing more webinars on how to reduce fossil fuel usage at your home and encouraging new construction to look at alternative systems for home heating, et cetera, to educate the public on the alternatives that exist. I think it's been titled all electrification, but I think that's very confusing and it actually doesn't mean anything. So the process that they're looking into is how do you reduce fossil fuel usage in your home systems? The Springs CAC met and we had a lovely meeting outside at the creek, which was quite a pleasure. First, I'll say that they passed 2 resolutions for recommendations to the town board. One was in support of a nature preserve at Crandall Woods, and the other was in support of the town contracting with a traffic engineer regarding lowering speed limits in Springs to 25, where would be an effective traffic calming tool, and where they have incidents like Neck Path and Accabonac where people can really get going and do speed way over the speed limit. So they'd like to think a comprehensive view rather than saying, well, this street or this street or this street would be a more effective way to look at it. They also, again, I'm sure I sent out information on today's presentation, links to view it online. Also, I sent out the presentation to the chair, Loring Bolger, who sent it around to the CAC and all of her email lists on the updates on the cell towers. We're looking for those updates, and we're happy to see that they would be getting further information on that. They also talked about, David, during Little League season, how to improve parking at Maidstone. So it would be a little safer for the kids when they go to the games. How to maybe expand parking down into that first and second lot with some kind of help on making sure families were safe going back up the hill to where the ball field is, just so folks would be able to not park outside of the park so much as they do now to attend the games. The Litter Action Committee met and discussed an educational campaign. They're looking at a phrase called "Don't Trash East Hampton" as one of their phrases, and and will be post Labor Day spending the winter targeting trash along our roadways. And will seek to have informational signage placed at the town's recycling centers that they are happy to help reduce, reminding truck owners that loads must be covered on their beds, and they'll place the signs at both recycling centers as a reminder, and then hoping to look for some enforcement down the line on that, and also creating PSAs for WLNG, seeing if they can get some PSAs for LTV and anywhere else, looking to partner with some businesses, perhaps to be able to have signs saying "Don't Trash East Hampton," which is something we all care very much about. Members of the Waterfront Advisory Committee have been asked to participate in a multi-town and regional webinar, and be an example for towns who are in the process of creating their local waterfront advisory plans in seminars. And Ramesh, Lisa LaCory, and myself will be participating. The CARP committee will be meeting in the next week or so to discuss implementation of recommendations after the passage of the CARP plan. The adoption of the CARP plan. South Fork Wind will be holding a virtual open house on September 12th at 6 p.m. You can go to southforkwind.com to register for more information. What this virtual open house will be discussing, and they've already started to do door-to-door outreach for impacted folks down in Wainscott. This is the final phase that will be happening over the winter of the onshore construction of the cable that will attach to the wind farm at some point. This includes the horizontal directional drilling that will happen and the finalization of the under road construction, which is just about done. They're finished with sheathing and work on the railroad right of ways, and they're moving along quite rapidly at the substation, which they were allowed to do over the summer. And that's all I have, Peter, for today.
Thank you. Thank you, Kate. Just want to give a brief update on COVID test numbers at the Stephen Hand's Path site for the week of August 29th the 22nd through the 28th. There was 20% positivity rate, 35 tests, 7 positives. For this past week, 8/29 through 9/4, 21 tests, 3 positive, 14.29% positivity rate. The town is continuing to offer free test kits, at-home test kits as well. Here at Town Hall, we ask that you limit yourself to 2 test kits per person. And the Stephen Hand's Path, 110 Stephen Hand's Path, testing is continuing Wednesdays and Fridays from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. COVID is still with us. Please take necessary precautions. And if you do feel symptomatic, stay away from others and protect others from the spread. I want to, at a coming work session, perhaps later this month, if not early October, discuss with the board reducing the minimum lot size required for detached apartments. It's currently 3/4 of an acre. There has been interest in reducing that to half-acre lots so that if someone with an existing garage or space available, obviously meeting all the town's other requirements, setbacks, building coverage, et cetera, to be able to construct an affordable apartment or convert a garage into affordable apartment. There's currently now a limit of 40 per school district. We had seen really, I think, not as much participation in that town program as we would have liked. And part of the reason is that those who would most likely take advantage of it are in half-acre lots. And so I think it's worth a further discussion about reducing that requirement. Also want to review at the same time the maximum square footage allowed for affordable apartments, whether they be attached or detached. Currently, they're limited to only 600 square feet, which is really quite a small amount of space for more than just a studio living. So I'd like to bring that forward, have the board discuss that with the planning department input at an upcoming work session. We had discussed as a board increasing the number of buses on the hopper for the South Fork commuter connection. We've seen an increase in ridership. The board has signaled its support for adding an additional bus. There is state funding that we do receive as part of the South Fork commuter connection last mile of service. And we have been in discussion with the hopper who has proposed a route change to split the ridership between east and western portions of the town. So we don't have a start date as of yet, but it should be in the next couple of days. And again, that cost will be covered by state funding that we do receive for that last mile of service. I continue to work on the budget with our budget officer, Becky Hansen, and the finance department and staff to develop the tentative budget for 2023. That budget will be released on September 28th. That's the current schedule. And at that point, board members and general public will have an opportunity to review the budget. We'll have 2 subsequent work sessions to discuss the proposed budget where board members or the members of the public can make comments about the proposed budget. Those will be on October 4th and October 18th, with a public hearing notice going in on October 20th in the Star, our paper of record, with the November 1st public hearing. And then we'll vote on adopting the budget on November 17th. By New York State law, we're required to adopt that budget prior to November 20th in the preceding year. So in the current year. So that's the outline of the schedule as it is now. My focus has been on increasing wages across the board. It's imperative that we remain competitive with our local economy and demands here on the South Fork East End, particularly due to the geographical situation where we're at the end of the island, along with the commute times that causes and the extremely high cost of housing here in town. We are facing, like all businesses in the South Fork and municipalities, a difficulty in both retaining and attracting staff. So we need to take significant steps to be competitive and remain competitive. In addition to that, the board recognizes how highly competitive the nature of our situation is. And we've been working on ways to attract staff and with the goal of retaining our many excellent employees. And that work has continued with discussions with the being led by Kathy, as I've asked her to reach out to department heads and our local bargaining units to discuss ways in which we can further incentivize employment with the town and get a competitive edge over other municipalities who in some cases are working to poach our employees. So that will be, that will be our challenge. in this upcoming budget cycle. It's not one that I think we can completely solve in a single year. As I stated last year, this was something that we needed to move on. Last year, we regraded 136 positions. We've seen with increased inflation and cost of living across the board, housing particularly, and commute times, that we need to continue in this direction and continue to work to be competitive. Having our roads plowed in the wintertime, it's imperative. And public safety and all the services the government provides for the general public depend upon our ability to have a fully staffed municipality. So that will be our goal and our challenge. And that's all I have. We have a few resolutions to offer. Kathy, I think you have the first.
I do. 2022-1116 is to amend Resolution 2022-996. And this was where we appointed Marie Osborne to the position of office assistant with the town clerk. And now we have to change her start date, which is September 5th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, pass and carry.
2022-1117 is to appoint and amend the East Hampton Volunteer Ocean Rescue members for 2022.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
Resolution 2022-1118 is provisional appointment to environmental technician for Morgan Slater. Resolved that Morgan she is hereby appointed on the provisional basis to environmental technician in the planning department, the hourly rate of $24 and I'll give it 11 cents for $50,142.56 annually for a 40-hour work week, and to be paid upon submission of time records effective September the 26th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passed and carried.
Resolution 2022-1119 is to accept an undertaking and security for urban renewal parcel 75 in MN-2. This is, the applicant is Brett Harris, and the urban renewal parcel is Suffolk County tax map number 0300-28-04-013. And it is for a check for $12,840.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
Resolution 2022-1120 is a payout upon resignation of Marco Wu. Marco is a senior planner and he has resigned his full-time employment. We're sorry to lose Marco. He's going back to school. So we wish him well in that endeavor. The payout is for 34.53 vacation hours at $30.34 per hour for a gross total of $1,047.84.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passed and carried.
I think this one's me. 2022-1121 is a payout upon retirement for Agnes John. Agnes John was a home health aide in the Human Services Department, and she retired from her full-time employment effective August 15th. And her payout is a gross total of $9,462.36.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passed and carried.
And I have 2022-1122, and this is to authorize a budget modification and registration and travel to Advanced Energy Conference. And this is for a budget modification of $367.03 from office expense, transferred from office expense to the fund line for travel conferences for Samantha Klein. The Natural Resources Department is authorized to attend the Advanced Energy Conference from September 8th, 2022 through September 9th in New York City. A conference and travel costs are expected not to exceed $1,250 and will be paid from travel conferences. And the registration fee for the 2-day event, the railroad fees, the transit subway fees, meals per diem rate, and authorized expenses will be reimbursed from the appropriate fund line, and a town vehicle is authorized to be used for travel. The financial impact is $1,250 to the town.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passed and carried. Resolution 2022-1123 is the appointment of police officers Academy Daniel Munoz and Samantha Dushman. Resolved that Daniel Munoz and Samantha Dushman are hereby appointed to the positions of police officer, Spanish speaking, and police officer, respectively, in the Police Academy at an annual salary of $58,563.16 to be paid bi-weekly from the said budget account, effective September 12th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passed and carried. Do we have any other resolutions or matters to bring before the board?
No.
I move that we go into exec session for CPF, advice of counsel, and personnel.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passed and carried. It's 1:00 now. Shall we
Do we,
reconvene it?
do we have times for any of the attorneys that are going to be joining us?
I believe we have.
So reconvene at 2:00?
All right,
Sounds
guys.
good.
Have a good day.
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.